Phone. Welcome back to the world famous Jiggy Jaguar radio broadcast. We are coast to coast and border to border on iHeartRadio, AM/FM, 247.com, 50 plus AM/FM stations across the country and around the world. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to our actual guest. Joel Pollak is with us. Joel, how are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good, actually. Now, you have a tremendous new book out there. Tell us a little bit about this book. It is tremendous. There's all sorts of people giving you rave reviews. Tell us all about it, man.
The book is called Red November. Will the country vote red for Trump or red for socialism? And it's a story of the Democratic primary up to this point. Starting at the very beginning of the Trump administration, you see the Democrats take a sharp turn to the left. And right up through today, it's led to the point where we have the most left-wing candidate ever to run for the presidency. Joe Biden is known to many as a backslapping good old boy for 50 years in Washington, but he's running as the second coming of Bernie Sanders. He has moved so far to the left that his positions are basically indistinguishable from the ones that Sanders ran on. And he's talking about revolution and transforming the country. He is offering American voters more upheaval rather than a return to normal. It's a really odd position to take, and you can't really understand why Joe Biden has become so radical unless you understand how radical his party became along the way.
So explain to us the writing process for this incredible book. Tell us all about it.
Well, you know, I was a conservative reporter on the front lines there. Really the only conservative there from the beginning to the end. And I decided just to follow the candidates around, and I did that for the better part of a year. In fact, for almost every week, right up through March of this year, for an entire year, I was on the road. I was in all the early primary states. I went to the debates and followed the candidates around and basically got a sense for who they were, who the audience was, what ideas they were offering, and what the fight was like.
We have got Joel Pollak with us today. He joins us live here in a broadcast. And this book, incredibly well written, it's called Red November. And he joins us today here on our program. So what do you want readers to take away from your writing of this incredible book?
Well, I'd like them to enjoy the book, first of all. I mean, I had a lot of fun writing it. And even though the subject is rather grim, there are a lot of funny things that happen along the way. There are some encounters with candidates, some of which have already made it onto Fox News and elsewhere, but I was one of the only reporters to really ask tough questions of some of these candidates, and the results were sometimes hilarious. So you'll want to just enjoy it. I mean, I think it's also interesting. It's a bit of nostalgia because nowadays so many of us are sitting at home. We can't go to work. We can't go to school. It's almost quaint to remember an age when campaigning happened with shaking hands and kissing babies. But I take you right back there. It wasn't that long ago. You know, it was just a few months ago. The world was different, and you kind of relive some of the way this all started. It's a world that is superficially so different from our own. I mean, the people are the same, the country is the same, and the left-wing policies are the same, but it was just almost a different era, and I think it's fun to revisit that.
We have got Joel Pollak with us today. Red November is the latest from him. So what do you want readers to take away from the writing of this book? Because you've put a lot of time and effort. You put a lot of research. You've done a lot with this book heading into this election.
Well, I'd like people to use it. First of all, I mean, the writing part, I hope people enjoy it, as I said. But also just what motivated me to write it was my concern about the left-wing drift of the Democratic Party and what it meant for our country. And I think what I'd like people to take away with is that their vote in the November election will have real profound consequences. I really do think that Democrats are offering a revolutionary agenda, and that's in a bad way. You know, they really want to transform the country. They want to change it to something else that it was never before. They want a second American Revolution, one that sort of undoes the first one. And I think that's really what's at stake in this election. So I think people should consider that very carefully. And this book will help explain that.
It is a great guest, Joel B. Pollak, with us today. He joins us live. Red November is the latest from him, and he joins us live here on our big program. So this book, incredibly well written. You've put a lot of time and effort into it. Tell me about some of the reviews, criticism you've gotten in the book so far.
Well, the reviews have all been good. The criticism has been hey, how can you say that Joe Biden is the most left-wing candidate? People have this idea of him as someone familiarly, on the left, but not so threatening. But the truth is, he's not really in control of his campaign. That's the first step. He's had to accept this left-wing agenda that's been forced on him by his party and by the Bernie Sanders supporters, who he still needs to come out and vote. He's worried they won't show up for him. And the other part of this is that Joe Biden himself has admitted that he's offering what he calls the most progressive platform since Roosevelt almost 100 years ago. But it really is, first of all, it's more left-wing than Roosevelt by a mile. And secondly, they're admitting that this is more left-wing than Barack Obama. Obama himself has said that Biden's running on a more left-wing platform than he is. And he said almost apologetically that he himself would have been more left-wing if he felt he could get away with it politically at the time. I'm paraphrasing what he said, of course, but that's what he said. In endorsing Joe Biden, Obama said, I would have been more progressive if the circumstances had allowed. And Joe Biden is being as progressive as I want it to be. And that's not coming from a conservative reporter. That's coming from Obama himself. But you can also look at other sources. The Washington Post has remarked on how far left Joe Biden has gone, several reports, in fact. So I think that's been the criticism. People are finding it hard to believe that Joe Biden has become the emissary for this socialist movement that's taking over the Democratic Party. But that's where we are.
Joel Pollak with us today. He joins us live here in our broadcast. So, Red November is the latest from him. Get more information online. He is doing some incredible stuff. So Joel, this book, you put a lot of time and effort into the book. What's been some of the different, folks that have asked you about some of the various characters that have been on the campaign trail? Do you pretty much spotlight everybody that's been running or has been running or whatever in the book?
Yeah, I spend a few chapters on that. I describe each of the candidates, and I divide them into different groups. There are the majors. There are the major candidates, like Biden, Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. There are the minors, the ones who offered something of a challenge, but not really. And then there are the also-rans, people who sort of made their brief entrances and exits. And then there are those who decided not to run or jumped in late. Mike Bloomberg said he wasn't going to run, then he did run. He spent $1 billion, got out. People like that. So I give you a little character profile, and they really are great characters, some of them. Some of them are just quite interesting. Like them or not, agree with them or disagree with them. They make for a good book.
Joel Pollak with us today. He joins us live here in our broadcast. And you can get more information online. He is the senior editor-at-large at Breitbart News, author of this brand-new book, Red November. And tell me about the cover. Who helped design the cover for this book?
Well, we had an in-house artist do it at Hachette Books. And originally it was going to be one of those typical political covers, just a bunch of words and a nice graphic design and a nice font. And I actually said, you know what? We're missing an opportunity if that's all we do. We really need to get these characters. These characters have to be on the cover. These candidates aren't just ordinary candidates. Some of the things that happen in the primary are so zany, so silly. Let's try to capture the essence of the crazy political scene that we find ourselves faced with. Let's get a drawing on the cover. So they went back and they produced this drawing. It's a fantastic cover. It's very eye-catching. It's funny. And I think people will enjoy it.
It is Joel B. Pollak with us today here in our program. You can find us on iHeartRadio and also AMFM, 247.com, TuneIn, iTunes, and, of course, Spotify as well, and 50-plus AM/FM stations across the country and around the world. The ultimate guide to the 2020 election is Red November. It's Joel B. Pollak, and he's joining us today here on the telephone. So Joel, what do you think? What are some of your goals for this book?
Well, obviously, I'd like to sell as many as possible, so if people can go and buy Red November, that would be very helpful. But, I'd also like just to put out there in the public consciousness what a momentous election this really has become. And this is not just asking people who they want to run the country. The Democrats are basically running on a promise to change the way the country is governed. They want to change the Senate. They want to change the Supreme Court. They want to change the Constitution. They're not running just to win one election. They're running to change the country forever. That's what Joe Biden is. He's running revolutionary institutional changes. He's talking like Bernie Sanders. He wants a political revolution. I think people should understand what that means. It's not just we get a Democrat running things instead of a Republican, so a few policies change here and there. They're going to change the way the entire thing works, and not for the better. We've never seen a socialist system succeed, and I think Democrats are, at the moment, completely dominated by the left. And this is not an ordinary election, so if there's anything I can achieve, I think it would be to raise that in public consciousness.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you making time for us today, Joel.